Today we have with us Chris Hellstern. Chris is a licensed architect and affiliate lecturer at the University of Washington. He has dedicated his career to progressing sustainability within the built environment. His architectural career has spanned a variety of project types and team roles ranging from LEED to Living Building Challenge certified buildings. He's also written a book called A Living Building Education, which chronicles the Bertschi School Living Building project. Additionally, we have with us Dr. Bridgette O'Brien. Dr. O'Brien is an experienced educator who teaches IB Global Politics at the Annie Wright School in Tacoma. Her research, curriculum development, and courses integrate her global experience and knowledge about the world's religions with environmental ethics and sustainability issues. Hello, Chris. Thanks for coming on with us today.
Hi, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. So help us understand your background and how you connected with the UW's real estate department.
Sure. I'm an architect by training, and I had come in the past several years and done some guest lectures actually for the dean and her class. And I guess they were interested to hear more. So they had an open position and reached out to me, and through a colleague of mine who's also a lecturer there, Nicole Danimer, she talked with them about having me join. So I now have a position in teaching once a year the sustainability course for real estate.
Well, I'm lucky enough to be a part of that course this spring, so thanks for teaching that. And when you're not teaching that course, what do you do with the rest of your time, full-time profession?
Yeah, so I'm an architect at a firm in Seattle, a Miller-Hull partnership. And right there, I'm primarily a sustainability director. So with my expertise in Living Building Challenge, I try to work on all of the projects in the office. And I have a set of coworkers who are also sustainability directors too that work along with me. And we have a nice little team of sustainability staff. And so our efforts are really to touch each project and try to bring sustainability principles to the designs we put out for the firm, and also help further along the firm's mission and principles around sustainability.
Chris, I've been fortunate to read your book, The Living Building Education, and I wondered if you could share a bit about the book itself and maybe even your master's project that kind of led you to work on the Living Building Science Wing design with the Bertschi School.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking about that. Yeah, it was a book I put together a few years back now that really chronicled the Bertschi School project. And that was one of the first living buildings in the world. And as you mentioned, there's a thesis project really that I had back in college for my master's in architecture. And at the time I didn't realize, but apparently I was almost designing that exact project within my thesis. It was a school that helped bring environmental education to the students, but the building was really focused on its environmental curriculum, but also the sustainability features within the building, and that transferred into the curriculum. But then years later, once I became a professional, I ended up being able to work on a project like that with the Bertschi School. And that was a Living Building Challenge project, working with the school and a great team of professionals here in Seattle, and who all volunteered our time to do that project and end up being one of the first living buildings.
That's amazing. So with other living building projects, I wondered if you happen to be a part of any of these, and if there's multiple projects, is there some dimension of sustainability that's really exciting or stands out to you in these newer projects?
Yeah, I think it's great to be able to continue these. I mean, after I first worked on that project, what we always say is you never want to go back. Once you do a living building project, it's hard not to make all of the rest of them kind of in that light. And so it's been great to work at Miller-Hull and try to continue that on. And we certainly have. They've had a number of firsts with living buildings. They've certainly built still what's the largest living building at the Bullitt Center. We've been able to certify both of our offices as living buildings, both in Seattle and San Diego. We just finished up a house in Seattle area that also achieved living building certification last month. And now we're working on several more. And I think we'll have some good news coming out of another larger project we're doing. That's a higher education project that's going for Living Building Challenge, and a few more that are coming. So I think there's a lot of really great opportunities out there. It's starting to expand to other parts of the market too, not just these kind of one-off projects that are environmental education centers or individuals' homes. It's really starting to be more of a trend in the market. So developers are interested in it, and certainly larger civic buildings and things like that. So it's really exciting.
That's great. That's amazing. So I want to pivot for a minute. There's a sort of movement that's been going on, particularly in the past few months, around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as part of the Bertschi School model, you had written about something called the equity pedal, which is already sort of an implicit part of the school's design. I guess I was wondering if this recent wave of diversity, equity, and inclusion might have room to include a more biocentric perspective as we see this momentum grow.
Yeah, I think that's really a huge component of what we do in terms of sustainability. I mean, we can't really have successful sustainability without equity, of course. There's certainly environmental and social justice components to that, and we need to address all those issues too. And if you kind of think about it, what I talk to my class about, as Jeff has certainly heard, the three legs of the sustainability stool. If you look at environment, society, and economy, we know we have to address all of those. And so things like the Living Building Challenge are really starting to open that up and look into expanding what we think of as just energy or water savings for buildings, and starting to broaden it into equity. And that can be a range of things, from making a building universally accessible to having brought in a wider range of community members to serve as part of the design members at the table, actually, all the way to having a more diverse construction group that really helps to build the project. We've certainly had projects that have done that too. So really starting to widen what we think of as equity, serving as a resource for the community in following an event, a major event in a community. All these different ways we can start to bring these components in and address it in a better way. And when we even translate that to larger perspectives around sustainability, and we look at what we're seeing now with COVID, we know there's some disproportionate impacts to those that are socioeconomically disadvantaged for COVID. So there's some health implications. We know that when we talk about chemicals of concern in building products, those folks that are along fence line communities that live near where these chemicals are manufactured, we know that's an issue for them. And even health quality in terms of the indoor air quality of your home for folks that are exposed to emissions from gas cooking stoves or gas heating appliances. So there's some definite disadvantages that come out when we start to look at the range of sustainability and how that plays into our buildings and our communities.
Oh, I'm excited to hear about all the nuanced ways that you've been able to connect equity, and thank you for that. You've alluded to the fact that it is becoming more normative in both businesses and schools alike, that this living building design is sort of at the forefront, right, of market interests. I guess I was curious if you had to identify a particular hiccup or challenge in seeing this work continue to expand. Is it the financial logistics? Is it the ideological framing of environmentalism as a kind of political stigma? Or do you see other potential obstacles that you're still trying to reckon with?
Yeah, what's interesting is, we've certainly seen that these types of buildings are possible, not just with living buildings, but other high performance projects as well. We know we have the technology to do it. We have the engineering and understanding to be able to accomplish these types of buildings with this level of performance. But the difference is probably really how people understand it. And you talked a little bit about, in terms of how people perceive the problem. And it's not the same for everyone, right? It may not work to talk to everyone about trying to save the earth or an animal species, but we can certainly relate the things we do in sustainability to benefits for us as humans as well. We know there is risk avoidance in trying to build more sustainably. We know there's a health impact to those of us as building occupants and those who even build and manufacture products for buildings too. So there can be a wide range of how we talk about this. And really what we're seeing is kind of the economic system doesn't really take into account all the different factors that play into this. If you look at a traditional funding on a project or a return on investment on a project, it really just follows the capitalistic model that we have right now. It looks at rents and vacancies and all those types of things that help to sell projects. But we're really not factoring in other costs, like the costs of all the ecosystem services that are parts of these projects. What does it cost to all of us when we completely harvest a forest? What does it cost to all of us when we pollute a river system or remove a species of plant or animal on the planet? There are certainly economic costs to that, but there are also health costs to all of us and longer term environmental impacts that really aren't factored into the traditional models of how we build buildings. So I think those are one of the biggest hurdles to get over, is this change to the entire way we look at pricing and value.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that true cost accounting and thinking of ways to innovatively assess that value added that may not be as tangible or named is really interesting. So Thank you.
Yes, and coming from the MSRE background, where a lot of what we do is our performance and our modeling, we do get the different perspective of it from the sustainability method and how it can all mesh together. It's not one or the other, but a part of each.
That's the idea. It's a shared balance, right? And making sure that all those systems are equally factored, or at least considered.
Yep. Okay. So pivoting away from that, do you have a favorite book, charity, hobby, or what else are you passionate about?
Well, certainly the outdoors, as you might guess. Family and I spend a lot of time outdoors. Every weekend we try to get out of town and hike or spend some time in the mountains or the beaches around here. Really fortunate to live in such a wonderful place like Puget Sound here. And work-related hobby, I guess if you'd call it that, I do a lot of work around advocacy and policy. So really helping to develop codes and laws and different legislation, both at the city, state, and even national level. And it may not sound like such a hobby, but that's a fun thing to do that I find, at least. So, yeah.
Great. So final thing, if people wish to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Sure. I think LinkedIn, as you mentioned, is always a good one. And I have a UW email as well. So it's another way to find me.
Great. We can provide that as a link on here as well. Appreciate you coming on today and sharing your thoughts and interest and your perspective on sustainability and as it relates to the UW's Runstead program, but also out there bigger in the world and other projects.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thank you for your work and your insights. And just know it's been very inspiring to read your work and kind of hear about some of your recent projects.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's good to be here. And I think, thank you for the program that you're putting on. It's great to get this information out for folks.
Great. Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.